Hello and welcome to the latest from Hearts Standard. My name is Joel Skett and I'm delighted to be joined by Scott McIntosh for a slightly later start, just for variety of reasons. But Scott, thank you for joining me. How are you?
Yeah, very well. Thanks for having me on, Joel.
Are you looking forward to the start of the season? You looking forward to tomorrow?
I certainly am, and it's funny you mentioned the word variety. I think we're going to hear and use that word quite a lot. I think it's definitely going to be in the vernacular over the coming sort of weeks and months, given the squad depth and potentially more additions coming in over the next few days.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that we spoke to Naismith today at this pre-match press conference. That stuff will be kind of going out tonight, tomorrow morning, and it was around the competition for places and just how he is going to manage to pick 11. There's going to even just week to week, I think there's going to be boys missing out the squad. It might be a surprise, especially if everyone's fit, and then it's going to be one where whether you're in Diggers, Tiny Arms, Stratties, whatever, making your way to the game when an hour and 15 minutes before kickoff, you get you're kind of just waiting for the team news to drop and wondering what it is going to be this week.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, and naturally, because not just the fact that we've signed a few players and they've came through the door, there's a variety in terms of what they can offer and different formations as well. So even before you discuss personnel, I think there's always going to be 2 or 3 formations that potentially Naismith can rely upon now, which is great for flexibility. But whilst we're trying to bed players in, I'd imagine it's going to be a bit trial and error, and there could be some teething problems with that for the first month or so.
And what about the starting 11? Like looking ahead to tomorrow when the team news drops at what? So kickoff's at 12:30. I mean, it drops at 10:15. No, 11:15. If I do my maths. What are you hoping to see against? What are you expecting to see?
Yeah, it's one of those where I think, first of all, to tackle what I hope to see, that has chopped and changed a little bit. There was a little bit of me that was thinking, right, the temptation is there to just sort of match Rangers, just sort of probably go for a bit of a 4-2-3-1, maybe play Kai Rolls as left back, maybe get a bit of solidity on the left-hand side, given that Penrice maybe hasn't had quite the minutes in pre-season that I think Stephen Naismith would have potentially wanted. And that's off the back as well, and missing a few months with Livingston last season. However, the closer I get to tomorrow, the more I want us to be really sort of proactive in our formation. And what I wouldn't like to see is a sort of double pivot at the base where we're kind of almost allowing Rangers time to pop the ball about in their own half and maybe get comfortable. They're also going to have a few new players that are going to be sort of trying to get climatised to the game here. So I'd maybe actually quite like to see us go with either a 3-5-2 or a very sort of advanced 4-1-4-1, where you've got sort of 2 probably number 8/10s, sort of playing ahead of a proper traditional number 6, but someone who's actually more on the halfway line rather than sitting in front of the back 4. In terms of personnel, again, that could chop and change. I think I'd quite like to see, just due to the fact that I'd like to see there be a little bit of continuity within the team tomorrow. I would probably select George Grant ahead of the likes of Danda and Blair Spittle in the centre of the park. And I would probably go with Cammy Devlin as well. The only one that I would potentially want to see, and it's purely down to necessity more than anything else, would be potentially Boateng, if he can get registered and if he can get that signing over the line. That's the one I'd like to see maybe play in between, maybe say Grant and Devlin, and have that sort of midfield free. I think if you can flood Rangers in there and pin back their fullbacks, that's going to go a long way to sort of ensuring that they're going to have a more uncomfortable day than we will.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Boateng's a big one. I believe the club are still working on getting that over the line, so he is at least available tomorrow. He was certainly in Edinburgh today, and it's one where I think you can just see from Naismith's comments today at the kind of the broadcast side of the press conference when he talked about he's probably underrated because he does a lot of the defensive side of things. He is athletic, he has physicality about him, and he's comfortable receiving the ball in the middle of the pitch, which is a really good quality to have. And I think that's when you look at the midfield, we don't have a lot of physicality. And I think we've spoken at times during the off season where you're looking at potential areas where you strengthen. We've got loads of options in midfield, but someone who is physical and really athletic in the manner that Boateng is, don't have many of them. And then when Benny's out, it's even, you kind of just don't have anyone to come in and just naturally sit there in front of the defence. So I really do think that could be a pivotal one, and because that could just changes the dynamic of the midfield, doesn't it? In terms of probably who you can play in front. So that's a big question mark. I think the point you made about Penrice is pertinent as well. I thought he did well against Fleetwood. I think got an hour under his belt, and one of his biggest attributes is his stamina. But like you said, because of the injury that he missed at the end of the last season, when we spoke to him during pre-season, he was like, he was looking long term. He wanted to protect himself, so he wasn't getting a recurring injury, and that's something that Naismith wanted to do during his time as manager. Then you've got Kingsley, who is available, but it's whether he is involved, because if my memory serves me correct, he's not played in a pre-season game yet. I don't think he's had too much of a full pre-season. So there's these question marks where if they were fully fit, Kingsley's in your starting 11. Penrice is certainly, if you're playing a back three, is in your starting 11, and Boateng, if he was in the doors, in your starting 11. Preferably, I would, again, kind of to and fro, but I'd probably go with the back three and have Penrice and Taylor as wing backs, and then you've got Oyegoke, Kent, and either Kingsley or Rawls in there. And like you, I would definitely, I'd probably go for Devlin against Rangers, just with that energy, especially if Boateng's sitting behind, and then kind of split between Spittle and Grant on that kind of the left hand side of things. I think it's, in terms of striker or front two, I think you've got you go Shankland. You've got to play Vargas as well. Yeah, I would agree. No other options really came into my thinking when it came to sort of picking the front two. I think with regards to Cammy Devlin, I think playing in that five, if we can get someone to sort of play just that little bit deeper in Boateng, it allows Cammy Devlin to play with that edge that he has to his game, but in a bit more of an advanced area. My worry is playing in that double pivot and being that close to just sort of nicking either the ball or the body could lead to an early yellow card, and you really don't want that in a fixture like tomorrow. So again, I think if they can get Boateng in, we've seen it with Beningame only 3 years ago. We saw the impact he had coming straight in on the Saturday and playing against Celtic that evening. And I think because Boateng's been up here for the best part of 2 seasons now, it does negate the risk to a certain degree. And I do think it's born a little bit out of necessity as well. But going back to the forwards, there really is no other option. I know, to be fair to Tagawa, against Spurs, in terms of us transitioning from defence to attack, it's probably as effective as I've seen us being, albeit are getting the goal. But yeah, I just think that's probably too big a risk for Naismith to take. I think if that backfires on you, that's a real easy one for the fans to probably throw back at you. So yeah, I think Vargas and Shankland would have to start. And even if they go 4-2-3-1, I still think Shankland and Vargas need to be involved, with Shankland maybe just dropping and playing a little bit deeper. So that's in, because we obviously did our this week did our preferred 11s, or kind of the strongest, or what we feel is the strongest 11 in different formations, and you were in with the 4-2-3-1. I can kind of consider it as well, but you're the only one I think went with like Shankland as the actual number 10 with Vargas in there, which I agree with. I think that's the best balance. I think that's the balance that we've seen where Shankland gets the best of, because I think he's wasted when he's just having to go up against centre backs. I think you want him getting involved as much as possible, but then you look at him playing as a number 10, and then that means like kind of Boyce, Danda, and Spittle, 3 number 10s who their kind of favoured position is that one where Shankland is still probably our best number 10. Yeah, I would agree. I think a little bit that comes into my thinking with regards to Shankland and Vargas and who plays where, I do see Kenneth Vargas potentially as being
maybe just about top of the list of people that we can make some serious money on
Yeah.
over the next couple of years. And I think because of that, I would really like to see him get a sustained run as the focal point in the team. Plus, I always think we have 4-2-3-1 in specific fixtures. It's really easy for the forward to get isolated if they don't have much pace. Whereas at least if Vargas isn't seeing much of the ball, you can still feel a little bit confident that he might be able to stretch the back line by making those runs in behind. Whereas Shanklin, it's going to be mostly in front of the back four. So yeah, that was a little bit in my thinking there. There is a little bit of immediate, but also a bit of long-term potential success for the club.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think giving him the 5-year deal, I think that tells you a massive it tells you a hell of a lot of what Hearts are thinking behind Vargas. Remember speaking to Naismith about Gerald Taylor, and he kind of went off on a slight tangent and talked about Vargas, and that he wanted to. He was telling the board from very early on, we need to sign him and get him wrapped up or get him signed permanently. But he also talked about there's still a lot to come from him in terms of his composure in the box. He spoke about how when he's got the ball in the box, he is the one under control because the defenders they can't make a rash decision. But we've seen him with some kind of rash finishing. The one I know I think he was offside in the end, but the one against Livingston, I think, or there was a midweek game. I think it was. I might be getting games confused, but I blared one over the
Hibs as well.
Hibs, a couple away to Great Morton as well, potentially. Yeah. But you see yes, he's still a goal threat. Yes, he's got pace. He brings that to the team. But out with possession, the good thing about him being even more central is he's more involved in terms of being just a pain in the arse and a pest to the opposition defenders.
Yeah, I would agree. And again, it's maybe not something we need to think about too much when we're maybe at home. And that's maybe where, if we decide to maybe play the 4-2-3-1 on a few occasions this season, you can alternate Vargas and Shanklin depending on where you're playing and who the opposition is. There might be more of a case to start Shanklin up top if you know you're going to have the vast bulk of the possession and you're up against a low block. Whereas I do think tomorrow, there will be opportunities to exploit Rangers behind the back line. I think specifically because they haven't done anything to improve on their shape defensively from the fullback areas. Yes, Yilmaz and Tavernier will offer a lot going forward tomorrow, and that's something we'll need to worry about. But defensively, they can be suspect positionally speaking, and I think having Vargas there, again, it'll just make life quite uncomfortable for the likes of Suter, who I think's toiled a bit with Vargas in the semi-final at Hampden a few months ago. So that, to me, is another reason why I think we've got to try and play him up top, either in the two or on his own.
So just touching on Rangers, what you mentioned wee bits and bobs there, but what do you expect from them? It's been a really curious pre-season, off-season for them, a lot going on and off the pitch. We've seen today that Philippe Clement signed a 4-year deal. There's kind of a number of kind of things factors off the back of that. They've obviously clearly just we're putting all our eggs in the Philippe Clement basket because that's what they need. They need a period of kind of sensibility and kind of patience, and give a manager time to sort out a lot of the a bloated but at times unbalanced squad. And then obviously from a Hearts perspective, it means that it's very unlikely Shanklin is going there anytime soon, because we know how we see Clement feels that. I think he likes the look of Shanklin, but not the money that Rangers would have to spend to bring him in. So with kind of all that in mind, what do you expect to see from Rangers when they are, I think, in a period of transition this summer?
Yeah, they're in a real period of transition, and in many ways, this should be the ideal time to get them, especially in a home fixture.
Yeah,
I've actually been quite impressed by Philippe Clement since he's came in. There was a lot of work that was needing done to trim that squad of a lot of players that really aren't up to the standard of playing for either half of the Glasgow teams. I think he also has the ability to sort of mix their style up. I think they can go back to front and they can be quite direct. So there is a little bit there to, I hate to use the word admire when it comes to talking about opposition teams, especially Celtic. But yeah, I think there is a lot to like about what Philippe Clement is trying to do at Rangers. What I would say is that that, I would presume, is still very much in the early stages of building what he wants. And that's probably, again, why he's been offered a 4-year deal. I think there's potentially an acceptance from the board that this isn't going to be a quick fix. This is something that is going to take potentially another 2 or 3 transfer windows, specifically if they maybe don't have the level of money to move around as what they would probably, wish for. So I do think there's probably an acceptance, at least from the board. The fans might be different, but at least from the board, that Clement is the man to take them forward. And I think tomorrow, what you will probably see is probably very much quite a direct performance. I think they will, and again, this is going to depend on how we set up, but I think they will try and go back to front quite quickly. I think they'll anticipate us to be coming out the traps early on, because that's always the general perception of how Hearts start games at Tynecastle. So they may want to try and just, go a bit direct, get in our faces the first 10, 15 minutes. And then the game might start to settle down into patterns of play after that. But they've got a lot of changes. They've signed a lot of young players. They've probably signed more project players than a team like Rangers would want to do during a summer. But to be fair, over the past week, they've brought in Czerny, and they've also brought in the Dutch guys. Is it Proper? Yeah, yesterday. So they will add proper pedigree. They are probably the 2 standout additions that they've made to the squad, albeit they've only been there a matter of days, and that might catch them cold as well.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some predicted lineups from a couple of colleagues that they've put for Rangers, and they've one of them suggested it'll be Butland, Tavernier, Suter, Proper, Ridvan, Barron, Diamandi, Lawrence in midfield, Cortez, McCausland, and Dessers up front, or McCausland could come out and Czerny could come in. You look at, I think there's some weak links in there. I'm so hesitant to say this because I know it'll come back and bite me in the arse, but like Tom Lawrence, I don't see it. I don't get it. Then I just think they're not really fully complete in the final third. From what I've read and seen, that Cortez probably won't give Ridvan Yilmaz much protection. Diamandi's a class act. He is someone that we really need to stand up to and make it difficult for. I think he is the player in that Rangers 11 that's like off a profile style that Hearts just don't have. Just being able to be dominant. Connor Barron, I rate him, but he's not someone, if I was in the Hearts wrestling, in the same way that Diamandi, that you're almost kind of maybe not fearful of, but you don't think, right, he's I need to match his level. Hearts have got players who've played beyond Barron's level, and then I look at Proper. I just think I've seen it in the past with firm. I think first test as a Rangers centre back is at Tynecastle. I think that could be a very, very difficult afternoon for him if Hearts play him hopefully the way that I'd like to see, as in make it very, very uncomfortable for him.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why, again, maybe going with the 2 up top and really trying to not just stretch them, but having Shankland maybe just making those little runs in front of them, trying to make them second guess what we're doing as well. This is where we can use the squad size to our advantage. You would like to think that opposition managers are going to have a real struggle, specifically during the first few games or first round of fixtures, to try and figure us out. So you're hopeful that you can maybe catch teams cold through that. And tomorrow's a prime example. But again, like you mentioned, there is players within the Rangers ranks that we should, albeit respect, but not fear. So you take Connor Barron, you take McCausland, you take Tom Lawrence, John Suter, Ridvan. There's a few individuals in there that, albeit they would be an upgrade on what we've got, the gap isn't quite where it has been with previous squads and teams that Rangers have had.
And suppose, probably to finish up there in terms of the Rangers game, I will ask you for a prediction. I listened to Scottish Round the Funnel, but I can't remember what your prediction was on that.
Oh, that allows me to change it then. No, I'm going to stick to it. I did say 2-2 at the start of the week, and I'm pretty much sticking to that. I've got a real feeling that, defences will not come out on top tomorrow for both sides. I just think if you look at what we've tried to do during the pre-season games and what Rangers have been attempting to do, I think it's fair to say that neither are going to sit back and try and sort of invite pressure. So yeah, I think it's going to be, I actually do think it'll be a really good match. I think it should hopefully be a good advert for the game in terms of it being on Sky Sports, but I'm probably going to say a 2-2.
Yeah, just Ben Odlin in the YouTube comment says, I think both teams will really try and go for it tomorrow, which will leave both teams fairly open. They have more skill, but if we can keep them out and get a goal, then we'll be hard to break down. I reckon I've got feelings like the opening day of the season, two games are coming to mind, albeit not nearly as good opposition as Rangers. Motherwell, when Mikalina scored a very late winner. Csaba Laszlo's first game, I think it was
the 3-2 game,
3-2 game, yeah. When he ran on and bollocked Juho Makela for giving the ball away and for the second Motherwell goal. And was it St Johnstone? Was that the opening game of the season? We won 3-2. Wanma,
Wanma
as well. So yeah, that's where I'm going to go. I'm going to go for another 3-2. I suppose just to finish up, we'll talk a wee bit about the kind of transfer business. We've touched on Malachi Boateng. Hopefully, get that over the line. Did you, from what you saw from last season, did you see a player that you'd like? When you saw him last season, you're thinking, yeah, he could do a job for Hearts, or it was a standard or level who could come in?
Yeah, I think he was quietly a bit of a standout in that side. Naturally, when you've got the likes of Cameron and McCowan in the midfield, naturally they're going to get receive the plaudits because they get all the sort of goals and assists. But I think Boateng and to a lesser degree, Silla, when he came into the side for the second half of the season, really did a good job of sort of mopping up behind them, because I think it's fair to say Dundee's weakest area of their park last season was their back five, and that might continue to be the case going into the season. But yeah, I think the fact that Dundee look to have now recruited to go a bit more back to front by bringing in the likes of Simon Murray, alongside obviously Curtis Main, who they brought in a few months ago, that would suggest that they're maybe not entirely comfortable with what they've got in that sort of pivot role now in their midfield, now that they couldn't keep Boateng there. So I think that says a lot for the responsibility that Docherty gave him last season. He's at a good age. I think we've talked a lot on these shows, in personal conversations, one-to-one. Hearts haven't just at times lacked quality and mentality in these types of games. Physicality has been a really big one. Athleticism has been a really big sort of major point, specifically in away fixtures and trips to Hampden. So I think Boateng, again, he helps bridge that gap somewhat. And I'm really excited to see him. I think he could be a really key figure. And as much as it's been great to, sort of plunder the bottom half of the league last season to get the likes of Penrice and Spittle and Danda in, I think for me, Boateng is probably closer to being a sustained mainstay in the team ahead of those three.
Yeah, absolutely. He is someone that during a few times last season, I went on to StatsBomb, which the kind of stats partner that we use, and just to see every time I watch him, I was like, I really like the look of you. You do a good job, not just defensively, but on the ball, you recycle it well, and there's similarities to what Benny does. Benny does for us at times. Every time I'm in the stats are the back of my test. But speaking to my mate as a Dundee fan, he was raving about him as well, and it's just he does a lot of unseen work. And same with Neuenhoff. Neuenhoff doesn't stand out in stats, but when you watch him, he's effective, and that's where you need to balance the two. So yeah, like you, I'm really excited to see him, and because of his age, you do think that potentially, just speculation, that with Benny signing a new deal, if Benny had a really good season this season, they might look to make money on him next summer, and then you've got someone like Boateng who is younger, and you've got him as a kind of ready-made replacement. And I suppose we'll finish on Andreas Salazar, that emerged last night. The Colombian left back who plays for Atletico Nacional, one cap for his national team. The reports emerged in Colombia, and it turned out to be true that Hearts were looking to sign him. Naismith spoke about him today, that he has been on the radar for a while. He didn't think he was the type of player, a player they would able to bring in, just because of his pedigree, that a lot of other clubs would be interested, but he's not played for his team since April, and there's been an opportunity for Hearts to go out and get him. So they have, so they're working on a deal to bring him in. Looks like a sensible bit of business considering Alex Cochrane's departure.
Yeah, certainly, and I think you're right. There does seem to be an indication that we were nowhere near leading the pack for his signature up until literally the last, maybe say 2 or 3 days. And then all of a sudden, whether it's been through teams pulling out or potentially his current side making a decision that he would be better suited to come into not Scotland per se, but the UK in general, and that's maybe then allowed us to sort of nip in there and potentially grab him. Again, because of the time that he might end up coming in, especially when you have to count getting the visa over the line and other bits of red tape, you might be looking at, at some stage this month, which means that he's going to need time to bed in. So it's not, I think, whereas with Taylor, I'm very confident that he can, come out the traps flying. I do think with Alsar, I think you're probably looking at, maybe September, October before you maybe see him starting to get a few games. And then it's just going to be a case of, waiting to see what the permanent option is going to be like, and then how he sort of settles in the country. I think having the likes of Vargas and Taylor there should hopefully help. Because really, generally speaking, South Americans settling into not just Scotland, but the UK game in general can be quite difficult, especially those first 6 to 12 months, depending on their language barriers and other things like that. So it's still an exciting one. And on paper, the pedigree looks to actually be a level maybe slightly higher than Vargas and Taylor were when we signed in. So that obviously adds to the excitement. The clips that I watched them yesterday, what I quite liked about them was the fact that, and this is similar to Penrith, so I noticed did this quite a lot when we played Livingston, I think at the turn of the year in the 2-1 game, likes to cross from deep positions.
Yes.
Not a case of having to hit the byline, which I felt at times with Cochrane, you needed to kind of almost get there. I think with Natty Atkinson on the right-hand side, again, it never felt like you could really penetrate or hurt teams from a deeper position. I think with Penrith, and if we can get this other deal over the line, we're actually going to have a really good option there to sort of hit teams from a deeper area of the park. So it'll be interesting to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that stood out for me. I know at times when you're watching YouTube clips, it's hard to get.
It was an 8-minute video that I saw.
Same. I looked at the same one, and I think it's sometimes hard to get a true reflection on him. But because he did it so much, I'm thinking, right, this is something that he does, and it's backed up that Tom Irving's had a wee watch at him, and he sent me some stuff across. I think he's going to do an article for the site, and he said that the thing that stood out for him was his crossing. He liked to cross from all areas. He liked to hit kind of diagonals as well. So if you're able to do that from deep, that when opposition defences are not settled, that's absolutely perfect. And there were my initial vibes from watching him was kind of Borna Barisic, like at times with his looked of kind of similar stature and his ability just to cross from all different positions. And I was just reading the comments. Liam says, need a new formation, struggling to find out how we find space for all these new players playing 3-5-2. Chris says, hi guys, I see Hearts finishing second this season. We have one of the best squads in the league and definitely have more quality. 3-1 to us tomorrow. Are you in agreement with myself that second is a stretch? I think we should just ideally just concentrate on just solidifying third and making baby steps.
I think we've got to remember we're about 17 points off Rangers last season, and we're not talking prime Rangers. Not that I'm expecting prime Rangers this season either, but I do think we have to take into consideration not just the fact that we're trying to bed in new players. We're going to have the additional responsibility and sort of challenge of playing twice a week for potentially over a sort of 2-3 month spell over the autumn-winter period. But I do think on top of that, I do think Stephen Naismith wants to, maybe radical is maybe not the right word to use, but on a Friday evening when I'm completely fried, it's the only one I can think of. He does want to maybe radically change how he sees his Hearts team playing. I think out of necessity, we decided to be a very disciplined team last season. We played very well out of possession. We were very disciplined, and then we were really good at defending set plays. I don't get the impression that is how Stephen Naismith foresaw his first season at Hearts. From a sort of playing standpoint, I think we kind of almost fell into it. With a poor running form, there was that game at home to Celtic where we were leaving ourselves a little bit more open. We took a really, a bit of a scalping that day. There was a bit of fan unrest, and then all of a sudden it was, right, let's just start at the back again. Let's just focus on being strong. And naturally, you had Lauren Shanklin really outscoring any sort of XG metric that you could throw at a player last season as well. So I do think there's a lot of changes that I'm expecting to see in terms of patterns of play and how we want to set up as a team, particularly when we're in possession. And I think because of that, it's too much to ask for that to all just come together in one season. I'm quite comfortable knowing that we might not finish on the same points total as last year. But again, you have to take into consideration that no other club has went through this summer without there being a little bit of radical surgery as well, in terms of there being a revolving door with their ins and outs. So I think because of that, we can probably get away with it this season. And then if we take advantage of maybe getting that last guaranteed group stage spot for next season, it just allows us to build that cushion to stop looking below and start focusing how you can bridge that gap. It's not a case of always saying go for second. It's just a case of getting closer to second.
Chip it away. Yeah.
That's the first challenge.
Yeah.
So looking at getting second, you've got to try and chip away at it, first of all. And 17 points over the course of a season is a very sort of big number to try and sort of surpass. So, yeah, for me, without sounding too pessimistic, I think we should just sit back and enjoy what I think will be a decent season. I think it will be a lot more pleasing on the eye than a lot of fixtures, but I do think there'll be a little bit more inconsistency than what we saw last season.
Yeah, agreed. And Liam says, not a chance with second. Even the worst Rangers sides are still miles ahead of us, sadly. And I think that's something you need to also consider, is that not only do you have to have a really, really good season and kind of move on, you are relying on one of the old firm, in this case Rangers, being a disaster as well. I think that's a few factors to come together. Just before we finish, I think this speaks to you, Scott. We are desperately needed for a right winger as well. Vargas and Musa better for the middle. Only have Oda unless we can switch Forrest over. I think you are of the same opinion that if there's one area that you'd like to see strengthened, is on the right.
Yeah, I mentioned that a couple of weeks ago. I said we needed another defensive midfield option before the Boateng sort of rumour hit. I did say we would potentially look at another left-back option, although I did think it was maybe going to be a youngster for the Premiership towards the end of the transfer window. And the other one I mentioned was right wing. It's maybe harsh on Musa after only seeing him and a very sort of small sample size. But to me, the makeup of the player looks more comfortable playing through the middle rather than being a disciplined sort of right winger. Who needs to sort of track back, who needs to have a bit of a positional awareness of what he's doing. I think with Yotaro Oda, I mean, it could still happen given his age. I know Andy Webster done a really good job. He sort of pleading his case during the week there at the Big Hearts event that you were a part of. So it has made me think, is there potential there for him to grow over the course of the next 12 months? We know what we get with Alan Forrest, and so does Stephen Naismith. He's probably one of those guys that he'll always be trusted upon. And I think he'll always have a role to play, so to speak. And I do think Blair Spittle could potentially play that role in specific games as well, just purely because what you see for Taylor could literally probably cover the whole right side and have someone maybe making an impact and cutting in as well. But that's probably the area where, if I was being greedy, that's probably the position I'd still like to see us maybe try and strengthen.
Well, we'll see what the next 4 weeks or so brings in the transfer window. But for now, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Scott, for taking the time to speak about the Rangers game. And thank you very much, everyone, for listening, engaging, subscribing, commenting, etc., etc. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and hope I am back on Monday. Not sure who with, but hopefully back on Monday discussing a Heart of Lothian win. But until then, goodbye and have a lovely weekend.